Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Barrens Chat podcast. I'm Sod, and with me tonight is my co-host Guck. This is a podcast about World of Warcraft by two guys who play it. The last season of Battle for Azeroth is upon us. Mythic Nyalotha is here. The race to World First has begun. A lot of cool things happened in the past week. A lot of preparation went into it. I stepped foot in Nyalotha. You and I both did a high key for Mechagon Workshop. A lot of interesting stuff with the patch, and you're doing your BWL prep. So, how'd the week in WoW go?
Yeah, very big week. So BWL, the quests to get attuned for that, those are out. I got those done with. Everyone in Classic is really just kind of getting ready for BWL. Something that if you are in a higher end guild, you've likely already begun preparing for your Thunder Fury, but with the drop of Phase 3 comes the actual ability to make Thunder Fury. It's going to be very expensive. It will require in total 100 thorium bars. The thorium bars aren't going to matter. It's the 100 Arcanite bars. So those Arcanite bars are those thorium bars that have been combined with an arcane crystal. Those go for anywhere around 50 gold a piece per server. So, you're looking at and you'll have to make 100, right? So it's 5,000 gold that you and your guild will have to sink into making the Thunder Fury weapon. But it's coming, right? It's going to be out there. The Blessed Blade of the Windseeker will be out. Who knows which server will have the first one, but you can expect to see a bunch of it, a bunch of those orange titles being spammed in the chat. That's going to be fun. But, Classic has kind of started to take a back seat. I think Blizzard did a really good job of pacing their content. They released 8.3 on the 14th. Then on the 21st, we got Normal and Heroic. All of this is a lot of really good retail content. They did a good job with 8.3 kind of front-loading the amount of content on the patch, so there's a lot of stuff you can do. There were those assaults, the lesser visions, the horrific visions. Sod and I dove into a Mechagon Mythic Plus key. If you do plus 10 or above, you've got the new Awakened Affix. There's a lot of stuff that you could get into. And then on this past week, you could get into the Raid finally, Normal and Heroic. So there's a ton of WoW retail stuff, and that little bit of pre-raid preparation that you need to do in BWL takes up so little time that you're kind of missing out by not going back to retail and just checking out the new systems that they have. I know I had a ton of fun doing the Horrific Visions with you, Sod. That plus 10, or it was plus 11, whatever it was, the maxed out key that we did, the new affix is great. I think the ability to move through the kind of Black Empire, through that Nyalotha version of the dungeon is really cool. I mean, it's like we've talked about. It's the rogue shroud for all, essentially. So yeah, there's been a ton of WoW content this week. And I guess really just this month. I mean, this whole month of January has been filled with a lot of really refreshing WoW content.
Yeah, in the patch, honestly, I mean, there's obviously a couple negatives with it, but, I really enjoy this patch. I think that the horrific visions are actually really awesome, and I really enjoyed running them. I kind of like pushing myself. Obviously, that you have a hiccup here and there, and I'm pretty pumped to try the new. I don't even know what it is this week because I just logged on and I won't be able to play till Thursday, but I'm really pumped to get into the new vision and see what that has to offer too.
Yeah, I think the visions are probably the best thing that they've added, just because it's kind of like a challenge mode. There are clear consequences to making mistakes, like the big one being you not getting to upgrade your cape as a result of failing it. So, there's like high risk, high reward. You can push yourself. You can try to do more of those secondary objectives, but it's all kind of based on, how many applications of a sanity increase do you have? I've gotten to the point where I've got that standard, the 3 charges of the orb. Also, now if I die, I come back with 500 sanity. So I've got like 3.5 orbs. The really big tech piece, though, is one where every elite that you kill, I believe it's an elite, it gives you 200 sanity. So this is what really allows you to continue rolling through those secondaries. The research tree isn't much of a tree. It's more of a twig. It's really just a research stick. You start at the top and you go kind of straight down. I think maybe at one point you have a choice between doing like solo geared technology versus the group focus stuff. But really, I mean, as far as the tech involved in the horrific visions, they're not that great. But as far as systems go, it's a good system. It's something that we should have had earlier. It plays into the lore of 8.3 really well. It's fun and engaging content. I would not say that it's as high quality as the Mage Tower was in Legion. So a lot of people said that this was going to be like the Mage Tower. It's similar but very different. It's not really a challenge mode. You go in with the expectation that you will succeed, and you have to make sure that you succeed, but you try to push your luck in the vision. Whereas in the Mage Tower, the first few times you're doing it, you are expecting to fail and hoping to get a little bit further to learn how to do the next few phases of the fight. Um, but yeah, all things considered, it was a good week. I have enjoyed the visions, but I did not get into the raid. And you had a few opportunities. I think you did normal. Did you also do heroic? And what did you think of the 8.3 raid?
Yeah, so a couple things. The guild that I'm in right now is doing this like progression strategy that I've never used before. So we went in, we did the first three bosses in normal, we zoned out, then did the first three bosses in heroic, which kind of makes sense. You get used to the mechanics. It's a big raid, so you get used to the mechanics, kill it on an easy difficulty, and then you get into heroic. And then on our second night, we immediately went into heroic, and it was a really rough night. But I enjoy the raid. My only complaint is there is way too much trash. I know there's like a lot of skips that obviously I don't know about and my guild doesn't know about on a 2 day raid schedule for 3 hours a night. It's not like, a lot of the guilds that are pushing the race to world first right now are using like these really clever warlock gateways that obviously I don't know right now, so it really kind of sucks for like it took like a half hour to get to the first boss that we attempted on our second raid night last week. That's like way too much trash. I know you don't want to make it too easy, and you definitely need a little bit of trash in the raid because having no trash is kind of like, boring, I guess, but it's just a little too ridiculous for me. But that's really my only complaint. The fights I did were interesting and tough. I would say they weren't really like a walk in the park. They weren't overly difficult. A couple simple mechanics, and obviously there was people having trouble with them. But I really enjoyed it. I actually got like quite a bit of loot, and my item level jumped up close to 15 item levels already so far, and that's in one reset, and that's only with killing like 6 bosses. So I'm pretty pumped about that. I'm really looking forward to like getting into it because like we didn't kill Hive Mind, but we got pretty close the other night, and I thought that fight was really cool. Like a lot of the ads and the prioritizing what targets to kill and really having to have everybody on the same page. I thought that was a really cool fight, and I didn't get to see much of the race to world first today, but like from what I understand, guilds are going to Hive Mind, and it looks like a really cool fight, and I want to watch it on Mythic for sure.
Yeah, and that's going to be the next thing that we really dive into. The last bit about the raid that I want to talk about, obviously, it's a huge increase in gear. So everyone who's kind of still competitively gearing, trying to do different things through 8.3 and into the end of BfA, obviously getting into the raid is going to be the best way for you to get geared up. I personally don't really feel super obligated or motivated to really go and get that gear because I don't know what I would be getting it for, right? I don't plan on pursuing Mythic. I don't plan on doing any sort of PvP. I don't plan on really pushing Mythic Plus that hard. I'll definitely do some of it for like a fun experience. Doing Mechagon Mythic Pluses, those are actually really good because it's for this patch, it's a brand new thing. But the raid is the most effective means to the end being increasing your eye level. So those of you who are crazy about your perps, there they are. The comment that you made on the trash, I feel like Blizzard really missed the mark here by trying. Like I think when they add trash, they want to prolong the raid experience to make it feel bigger and grander. But they like they fully fought themselves over this, because at the beginning of the raid, right, you'll see all of that trash, and there's a bunch of trash between the bosses, and it seems like, okay, this is going to be a big epic thing, and then you get to the end, and the end cinematic is so anticlimactic. It's like a minute. You see Rathian stab the carapace, and then afterwards you kill Nazoth with a big, beam of energy from your Heart of Azeroth. It just doesn't seem very climactic. It's not very rewarding. A lot of the other content creators, if you go out and look on YouTube, everyone's talking about how much the end cinematic basically ripped off Lord of the Rings. There's not any character dialogue in the end cinematic. It seems like it was something really rushed. And for BfA, they didn't do a lot right, but one of the things they definitely did right were those really high quality cinematics. If you think back to anything involving Sourfang, all of those early cutscenes and cinematics were actually really, really good. Like, BfA did not do a lot of good things, but they did that right. And somehow they managed in 8.3 to totally cut the legs out from under themselves and like kind of sell the raid short. It didn't do a good job of ending the raid. You think back to Legion, the last raid in Legion, sure, we fight the embodiment of the Argus World Soul, right? So we're fighting something that looks kind of like a pseudo primitive Titan, and we beat it, and that's all well and good. We don't really care. But the end cinematic showed the Titans working together to imprison Sargeras. That was a massive moment. Illidan becomes the warden of that jail. All of those things were so massive story elements that weren't even entirely necessitated by the fight, right? We're fighting something kind of unrelated to Sargeras and Illidan, but still the end cinematic brought in those elements to make it that much better. And we didn't get any of those like really good outside story elements in 8.3. And it was N'Zoth. It's an old god. We totally got shafted on our old god defeating cinematic.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, too, I think there is another cutscene after Mythic. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy, but I, I'm interested to see how this takes us into Shadowlands, and like that's where they kind of drop this patch, right? Because there's no point 0.5 patch. Like this is it. We're gonna get a pre-patch, and then we're gonna get Shadowlands, and I mean, who knows when that's gonna be? So this patch is going to drag out, and it's like you said, like if you don't care about like clearing mythic and like you just want purples, right? I mean, you're just going to get your purples and then stop playing this patch. I would expect this patch to really die down in a few months, and like people are just going to coast into Shadowlands and wait for that release, which is kind of sad, and it really sucks because yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the BfA story, but like I thought they did a really good job telling the story, and then they just kind of really dropped the ball with the ending of Nyalotha, which I honestly I didn't even watch yet. Like I saw, obviously, I've listened and been on Twitter and I've seen what the community said about it, but I like to wait to see it until I do it personally. But it like I know I'm gonna be let down, and it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, it is unfortunate because it was the main thing on the WoW content creator kind of like timeline today. It was just like overwhelming disappointment with the end cinematic, overwhelming disappointment. Like, where did we get? It's just like it's tough, right? Because you want to enjoy all of these story elements that they give you, because Blizzard does story so well, but yeah, it's just disappointing. You feel like WoW has let you down on so many things, but at least they could tell a good story for most of BFA, and then here they go at the end, and even that they ruin. It's just like could we please just end BFA now? Like, just let's just get it over with.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely hear you on that, and it's like I don't know. I'm enjoying the raids here, and I think I'm going to enjoy it for at least a few more weeks. And my guild has very lofty goals of trying to push 6 of 12 mythic this tier, which I think is doable, but it's very high goals for my guild. So I've been hanging out in the Discord a lot, and I obviously when I was when I joined, the leader was like, "This is our job. This is what we're going for. These are our goals." And I get in there and I'm listening to one of the guys talk, and he's a core raider, mind you, dies quite a bit to mechanics. He doesn't he doesn't look at his logs and he doesn't sim himself, and I'm just like, you're like really selling yourself short. Like I said this to him, he's like, I just don't care about that, and I don't think 6 of 12 is possible with core raiders like that, and kind of something of a bummer. Yeah, kind of like a bummer. The kids' numbers are okay, but it's like I really like raiding with people who like to push themselves and really strive to be better every week, and that was kind of a letdown. I mean, we'll see how the tier progresses with it and where they go, because it looks like a couple of the officers are really on top of it.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously there are tiers to this, right? This guy seems like he's at the very bottom where he doesn't even look at the logs and he doesn't even think about simming. But there are so many levels above that. You could just start by looking at your logs. Then you can start with looking at other people's logs. Then you can start diving into the logs, looking at like the summary, how your equipment varies, how your traits are varied. There are tiers to that, and you don't have to be the guy who digs through every individual's log and he goes through every tab and he analyzes every second of combat. You don't have to be that guy to become a more competent raider. Same thing with simming. Just because you run a sim doesn't mean that you have to like rearrange every single piece of gear that you have. You just install the pawn add-on, you put in your pawn string, and then instead of just guessing what gear is better or worse for you, you get a little green arrow that says, hey, this is going to be better. And, you can heed those answers. I mean, with things like trinkets and on use effects, that's a lot of your own kind of personal flavor and your own aptitude to use those things. But by and large, it's a pretty passive thing. You just run your character through the sim, and some people can be really hardcore about it. You can do that every single new piece of gear that you get. Some people can do it, weekly. They get their weekly chest, they equip it, they run a sim, they see how things go. There are just like so many levels to being a competent raider that if you are at the bottom and you're comfortable being at the bottom, you should also be comfortable not accessing Mythic, because Mythic requires you to be somewhere above that point in the tier of raiders, unless you just have uncanny good luck with gearing your tune and you are an incredible player that knows the exact nuances of your rotation to the T. But I mean, those players are few and far between, and guess what? They're already in those high tier mythic guilds, anyways.
Yeah, I also think one of the cool things about this guild is there are quite a few people capable of multi-classing, which I think is like really underrated. I have a hard time multi-classing, and it is actually really cool to see, to have a guild of people who are, consistently running keys on multiple characters and really, really pushing themselves and trying to just be the best that they can be for the guild too. So there's a couple of like low players, and then there's a lot of like high players.
And that kind of stuff is really indicative of players. And if they don't sim, but they have a lot of tunes and they run a lot of stuff on those different tunes, they're probably, maybe they don't know that simming is available to them. And if they were shown how to do it, they would get really into it. Players like that can be hidden around the corner just waiting to become a super competent raider. They just don't really know how. But if you bring it up to someone, if you ask them about logs and about simming and they're not interested at all, that kind of mentality isn't that, like, that's not the mythic mindset. And I know we've talked about this before in our rating in general videos about the mythic mindset, but that ain't it.
That's not even somebody I want to go to heroic with, right? Because I mean, heroic progression, if you're not in a cutting edge guild, it takes time, right? I would say if you're not in a cutting edge guild, it probably takes you a few weeks to like 6 weeks maybe to clear heroic. And like if you're not optimizing yourself, it's going to add a few more weeks to your in frustration to your heroic progression for bosses that you should be killing, but you're not because of underperforming players. And that's not something that I just don't want to play with people that are going to waste my time, really, is what it comes down to, right? I'm there in a raid for a set time. I just want the raid to keep moving. And I think that in order for it to keep moving, you need people that are there and cautious about wasting the other, however, like 24 people's time. If there's 25 people in the heroic raid, maybe there's only 14. Either way, I don't want to waste your time. I hope you don't want to waste mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's exactly how I feel about Mythic raiding and raiding in general. It's like, you are hooked up to all of the 19 or however many other people in your raid, and your progression is linked to every other individual. And yeah, like those one or two people that just, instead of choosing just to like try a little bit more, they actively work against their own best interests. Like that stuff just drove me nuts. Um, but yeah, like you could not be any more right about how that affects not just the individual but the raid as a whole.
Yeah, and it's total, like, even for it's not only frustrating for officers, but I mean, let's be honest, every guild has drama, whether, some guilds have a lot, some guilds have very minimal. People are whispering each other, like their friends that are in the guild. There's always cliques, and they're probably talking crap about you. So it's just something to be aware of. And that being said, the race has started.
Yes, yeah. So leave behind all of your reservations about terrible raiders and bad partners. This race is all about WoW excellence. You are going to get into like and the fact that in BfA we've had such an intimate connection through streams to see this race, like you are going to be privy to such incredible strats, knowledge, just game sense, quick reaction time, all of the badass elements of raiding are concentrated and super just magnified and put on display for the entirety of the world first race. This week and hopefully next week, we'll see how long it goes, are going to be filled with just awesome casters, great streams. We've already seen a little bit of stuff come out of Complexity Limit for NA, but on Wednesday, we're going to see Method join the race. And, with Method, we're going to have awesome casters. The best one, in our opinion, is probably going to be Preach. There's just so much to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, there's Preach, Rich Campbell, Falcone. There's all kinds of people in this race with a ton of knowledge. I believe Preach is the best caster. I missed his cast today, of course, but I'm really pumped to see that tomorrow. Limit killed 6 bosses in 6 hours. I would say that's actually like really substantial. That's like really good time management. They are currently 2 bosses ahead. There are 4 guilds stuck at 4 of 12. Complexity limit is at 6 of 12. And it's so cool watching their raid. And you have 2 streams with commentary. You have Complexity stream on the Complexity channel, and then you have Method on their channel, and then obviously you have all the individual players. And if you go to theirs, I know last race Method didn't stream their comms. If you go to any of the limit players, I know a lot of them are streaming their comms, and you can hear how they're strategizing the boss and whatnot. And the Imperative is also streaming their comms. So I know like TM Sean and Rignaros are probably their biggest streamers, and I'm sure you can find other ones on there. It's awesome to watch. It's awesome to listen to too. Like, I like listening to the casters a lot, but every now and again I'll go to an individual stream and listen to the comms and listen to how these top players communicate with each other, and what's going on in the boss fights, and how they strategize in between pulls and pick their comps and keep the raids moving. It's really, like, really cool content that we've never seen in any other WoW expansion, and it's here now, and it's on 2 different channels. You get all kinds of different point of views for it, and it looks like Fire Mage is going to be one of the top DPS. It's going to be played a lot. There's a lot of Demon Hunters in raids. Warlocks look really good. I've seen Ret Paladins. Like, every class looks like it's being played right now. It's really cool to watch. Holy Pally is probably the best, like the most used healer right now too, which I guess is a bummer if you play another class.
Yeah, one of the things that I personally really enjoy about being able to see the Mythic World First race is that, yeah, that intimate side of, like, who knows if we'll get Methods comms for this tier, but if we do, the listening in on comms, listening in on strats, those are like just some of the most important bits of information that you can get. Not only are you seeing like why they're doing what they're doing, because sometimes when you watch WoW content, it can be kind of unclear. Thankfully, with really good commentators, they will help guide you kind of through it. But especially with like Arena and other WoW content, just watching it isn't always super clear. So being able to hear the strat, being able to hear what they're doing, to know why something went wrong when things go wrong, that's really important. And then the other thing that I think is really huge, these guys put in so much preparation. They do the split raids. They armor stack. They do so many different things. They'll swap tunes between fights. It's so complex to see the level of planning and preparation that has to go into this, and then on the other side of it, seeing the payoff of that preparation, it's just massive. It's like, for this past week we saw a lot of, full leather raids, full plate, whatever it is, and now we're finally seeing why they do these things and what benefit they reap from it.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool too that like you're actually seeing resources get pooled into this with, sponsorships and obviously the big casters and the big events. Like Limit has 25 players in Texas at, I forget where they're at exactly, and
They're going to be in Dallas.
yeah, and Method has like probably like 40. I don't not There's not 40 Method players. They have people from other guilds as well, but like the resources that are being pulled into this, and like it's only gonna grow and get bigger, right? There's a ton of people that watch this. It's awesome content. It's probably WoW's best content, really, if you think about it. I'm not a huge fan of the Arena World Championship. I watch it when it's on, but like it's not something incredibly engaging, and I think the MDI is actually really good too, but it's another thing where it's not engaging, and it's a lot of like the same classes over and over again in the same 5-man comps, and even arenas the same 3-man comps, because that's how the game's balanced. But here it's like you'll see people in and out of the raid the whole time. That like it's switching every boss fight. They're trying to find various strategies that work, and I just think it's really cool to see how all these people come together with one common goal. And it's not easy to get 20 people in one location to pull this off. It's not easy to get 20 people on the same page to kill a boss, let alone to get them in the same place in the world and play together.
I'm gonna go ahead and put out my predictions. I'm gonna say Complexity Limit wins the race to maybe 10 out of 12 or 11 out of 12. I can definitely see them, being ahead and staying ahead. But one of the things that we almost always see from Method is how clean they can execute on those high intensity, high tension moments where you're at those sub 2% pulls and half the raid is dead. They actually pull out the stops and they execute. That's one of the things that Method basically has always had over these other guilds, is they can go in there and they can execute. So I'm looking forward to seeing a contentious race, but still, I would say that Method's probably going to come out on top. I mean, they always do. I'm eager to see how the streams affect it, but I do believe that Method's going to come out on top.
Yeah, I would expect Method to get close to Complexity Limit tomorrow evening at some point. I would say Limit will probably stay ahead for the next 2, maybe 3 days, and then I think Method will catch up, and Limit will likely be second or third, because I think Method is the favorite and likely going to win the race. It's awesome to watch, and when you see how pumped these guys get for their kills, that's what it's all about. It's so cool to see. And I forget who had the world first in Crucible. I think it was a Russian guild, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe it was not necessarily a no-name guild. They were certainly not a no-name guild in the high-end raiding community, but they weren't as big as your Methods, your Limits, your Fat Shark. Yes, actually, was it that guild? I have to go back and
No,
check. But
I think it was either a Russian or an Asian guild. So they're like a little bit obviously not as well known around to us in the West, but I mean, keep an eye on those guilds. I know like Method sometimes covers them a little bit, and you'll see those pop up on the streams, and those guilds are no joke. Like a lot of those players are really good, and you will see them catch up and make a splash. I don't know if you'll see them finish top in the world again. It's certainly possible because they have pulled it off before, and keep an eye on it. It's going to be awesome to watch, and it's 24/7 coverage too for the next like probably week. I would say week and a half because it's a 12 boss raid.
Yeah, I'm super stoked to get into the world first race. But I think that's kind of it. Anything else you wanted to bring up today?
No, unfortunately, there's only 5 alliance guilds in the top 20 right now, and once Europe starts, that number's going to shrink. So sorry to the alliance players. It's kind of a bummer that you don't see the 50-50 split that you probably used to see, but maybe one day alliance will overtake the horde and win the race.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate all of the views, all of the follows. Come check us out, baronschat.podbean.com. Hit us up on Twitter at baronschatpod. Leave us a 5-star rating and review on the Apple Podcast app. And we will see you guys in the next one.